Welcome to the Cowboy Up Podcast. This is where talk is all about the West, the spirit of the West, and especially the people and personalities that make up the West. This is brought to you by White Stallion Ranch and Cowboy Spirit Radio Productions. How are you doing today, Russell?
Well, I never felt bad, but my voice was terrible, so it's finally back. I think I'm coming up now 5 weeks of this, and so I'm much better. And, of course, we're lucky we got Theo back because I did something wrong. I don't know what, but we had a great podcast with Theo, and somehow it didn't make it to the recording. I don't know how to fix it because I've never done it before.
You didn't know what you did wrong, so there's no way to know how you fixed it, or how to fix it, right?
Well, so we suckered him back in, and it was so great the first time. We just hope that we can perform as well.
I think we probably can, and getting Theo to get in here to do this with the other things he has on his plate is not a simple task, so I appreciate him taking the time. So before I yammer on, I'm going to just introduce Theo Windish, one of the co-founders of BaseCamp for Veterans. He and Deborah Plum are co-founders, and nobody wants to listen to me. Theo, welcome. I appreciate you being here and taking the time.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. And I won't take it personal what happened before.
Okay, good enough. Good enough. I'm gonna withhold no responsibility for that, although I think eventually I will get blamed. But that's okay. I will live through that. I got big, broad shoulders, right? I would appreciate it if you would explain what BaseCamp for Veterans is, where you guys got started, and what your goals are, because I've been associated with you folks now for, 6 or 7 months. And the first time I left here, I wanted to cry because the results that I saw were unbelievable. So would you take the time?
Yeah, I appreciate that introduction. BaseCamp for Veterans is really a program that is about building community. It's about building partnerships and making connections. So I love that you were able to walk away and feel that connection, because that's really what it's about. It's about taking veterans who have gone through combat and returned home and giving them another opportunity to practice getting back to life, getting back to who they were. And we, of course, do that here at White Stallion Ranch. We do that with Wild Mustangs. There's a whole team behind us that we put these veterans through an experiential week-long program where they can practice these skills, practice getting back to who they were.
Well, from my point of view, the fact that you do it with veterans is remarkable. But the fact that you bring their families into the mix and it becomes a three-dimensional experience for everyone, and everybody, like you said, gets back to that thought process of we are now a family once again. A lot of that gets lost, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I think that is one of the crux of the success of our program and why people get so much out of it, because they don't come here and have this experience and then just go home and it's nothing. We bring their family in for a reason, and that is because, well, one, when they go home, that's who they're going home to. The other thing is, just by nature of it, a lot of veterans, they experience that isolation. They experience that being alone, no one understands. So what in the world would we be doing if we said, well, now we want to bring you out here by yourself again? Just the whole element of having that family reminds the veteran that they're part of something bigger, that they're going home to something that they've actually built before they left for combat or after they've come home. So that family element is huge. It's key.
And it seems to resonate. I mean, it's not just spouses, but children.
Yes. Well, and you had asked me at the top, why do we do this? And Deborah and I come to this from different experiences in our past, but being the child of a long line of veterans, I think I have a firsthand experience that I can speak to with what it's like, with the pride, with the hurt, with the confusion that family members can often experience. So the children that come through our program as well with their parent veteran, I hope that they walk away with a sense of pride. I hope that we're doing something for their childhood so that they know that they should actually be proud of their parent. They should be proud of their family and the sacrifices that our veterans made. Well,
and it strikes me that before and I'm going to relate one specific story that to me was just really life-changing. The gentleman who spoke at the first event that I came to, I was talking to his wife, and she said, 4 years ago, he couldn't talk to anybody like you in public. And he was the primary voice of BaseCamp that night. Mm. And I was trying to combine, couldn't speak to any group. 4 years later, as a keynote speaker, I've done professional speaking. I know the amount of pressure that is. And for someone like that, for you to help someone like that go from point A to point Z, if you will, is pretty remarkable. And I think from my point of view, I was thinking, okay, how does this open up questions that his children might have or his spouse might have about what led him to the point where he couldn't communicate, and opening up on that so they understand what this individual has been through.
We can't take the full credit for somebody being able to blossom like that and be able to really come out of their shell. These veterans, they do a tremendous amount of work with themselves, with their family members when they're here. So I'm proud of that individual and of that story, because I think I know who you're talking about. And you're right, it does open up that dialogue. How did my father go from being somebody who was isolating themselves and not, enjoying family life, not connecting with me, and then now we see this jovial person standing up in front of a crowd of people talking about really painful topics. And I think that is all part of that journey, all part of the experience. 4 years is a really long time. However, in that time frame, we are really engaging with these veterans. We are offering clinics. We're offering social opportunities, anywhere from trivia nights to coming back for an equine therapy clinic here at the ranch. So it's an ongoing process that's ever unfolding.
So, Theo, I tell this story to people. I have a finance degree from the University of Arizona, but, the American system of secondary education, you get to take other things. Like I took astronomy, I took psychology, and loved most of those classes, actually. But so psychology, first semester, 101, probably A, was Freudian psychology, so psychoanalysis. And then the second semester was which University of Arizona is really well known for, was behavioral psychology, which is a very different approach. And the professor was funny because he's a practicing psychologist, and he talked about, he made his living, he was pretty proud to tell us, fixing bedwetters. He says it's easy and I can do it in 3 weeks and I get paid quite a bit of money and everybody's happy at the end of the day, except for this one mother who, I fixed her son from his bedwetting. And then for whatever reason, she went to a Freudian a psychoanalyst, and they said, oh my God, he wets a bed for all these underlying reasons, and you've just covered him up, and all this trauma or whatever it is just going to emerge in some different way. You better get him trained back to wetting the bed. So they took he's telling us this story, and of course we just college students were sitting there going, really? So they bring the mother brings the kid back and says, you got to train him back to bedwetting because we're going to really screw his life up here. So he says, so I got paid twice. I trained the kid to wet his bed again, and just kind of rolled his eyes, and that's a big difference, right? You're what's called a behavioral analyst.
Yes. Yeah.
And
yeah.
So talk about that. You don't need to understand what happened when they were 3 years old.
No. Well, it's funny because in the world of behavioral analysis, we don't use the M word, which is manipulation, because I think that, well, it has a negative connotation and people don't want to hear that they're being manipulated. However, behavioral analysis really is about the study of how environment impacts your behavior. And the difference between psychology and psychologists and behaviorism and behavioral analysts are psychologists, they really want to focus on why things are happening. And they want to process through and live in that area. Behaviorists say, I'm not super concerned with why it's happening. I want to know what you want to do in the future. I want to know how you want things to change. So, yeah, we can spend a little bit of time talking about how we got here, what was the motivating factor for this, but I really want to look at your behavior and I want to see what it looks like tomorrow and the day after that. So the main difference is we look at observable behaviors, what you are currently doing, what are the patterns that you're doing and engaging in, and how is that impacting those outcomes that you've identified you want for your life.
It seems to me, not, again, I took 2 classes 40 years ago. It seems like your approach is far more applicable to what you're doing.
Yeah, so there's a couple different realms of behavioral analysis. I specialize in clinical behavioral analysis and applied behavioral analysis, which I think is what you were pointing to with how it's pretty applicable to what we're doing. Because applied behavioral analysis says I'm watching what you're doing and I'm watching your environment and I'm taking data based on these behaviors that I see and everything that's going on around you. And I also know the goal line. I know where we're trying to go. So I am going to focus heavily on how do I apply interventions, how do I apply what I know and change your environment, change your surroundings, change the people and the approach around you that will nudge you in that direction. And eventually over time, you have achieved your goal. So I don't spend a whole lot of time talking about someone's past. And I think that that's the other thing too. You talk about bedside manner with people who are in mental health, and psychologists, they usually have pretty soothing voices. They're really calm. Come sit on the couch and let's talk about, your childhood. Whereas behaviorists are a little bit more brash and they're like, I don't care. Like what we want to do is we want to talk about tomorrow. So what are you doing? Knock it off type of thing. Now that's a really dirty version of what goes on, but essentially we tried behavior reduction. We want to cut out what is holding you there so that you can move into the realm that you want to.
You want the bed to be dry in the morning.
Yes. Yep. I care about the bed being dry in the morning, and I don't care about your childhood. So.
Now, I didn't know if the bedwetting story was about me. I mean, there's always that possibility. But, okay, now, what I would appreciate, as I know from everyone I've talked to, that Michael and Russell True and White Stallion is a really integral portion of what it is you do. And an incredibly important thing, because these people, these families and veterans, they love coming here. Mm-hmm. And they get something out of the fact that they're here.
Yeah, so for those of you who aren't familiar with White Stallion Ranch, it's a beautiful experience, and anybody should spend time coming out here. It is definitely worth your trip. You will see places, you will see sites that you will not see anywhere on this planet. So we're very fortunate to be able to have an incredible environment to do our work in. But a funny story about Michael and Russell is when my partner Deborah and I came to them and said, hey, we have this idea. They were very gracious and said, oh yeah, that sounds nice. Okay. But I think behind the scenes they thought, this will never work. What are these kids doing? That's not whatever, but okay, fine, do whatever you got to do. And, since that was 2018, and we have since been able to build our program here with their partnership. They've been integral to giving us ideas. Every time we have a new class that comes through, we are able to brainstorm and collaborate and provide an experience for these veterans and their families that I personally think is unmatched.
And they're actively involved in it. It's not just something that they'll give a couple of minutes to, but they're actively involved, aren't they?
Well, I mean, I'm going to interrupt you because, to be fair, Michael, who I always say guests see more of me, and so they think I'm the guy who's moving all the chess pieces. And I always say, I make it look like it runs, but Michael's really the one who makes everything run.
Agreed.
And there, you were very quick. So that is true. But at the same time, because he has such a focus on the details and is really a far better detail person than I am, I struggle with the details in some cases. He also doesn't always have time for other stuff. And I was the guy who was always involved in the Dude Ranchers Association and tried, hopefully I've succeeded at some level, to bring a broader approach to certain things we do than maybe we had for a while. But Michael's just, making sure that there's no peeling paint and everything is the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be, sort of Disney-esque attention to detail. But he likes BCI and what they do so much that he's on their board and he's very involved. And so that's, really they don't need me. And so I don't claim any credit at all for BCI and what they do here. But Michael deserves a lot. He's very engaged and very involved, and he's there at the flag going up and the flag coming down, the BCI flag we're talking about, and all the things that go on. So Deborah and Theo work very well together on this, and so it's time for a break. So the bottom line is hats off to those three.
Golden Wings horseshoes are the most revolutionary horseshoes created since the Romans used hippo sandals over 2,000 years ago. From ancient times to the present, man has developed many methods trying to protect the hoof of the horse. Some of these methods, sadly, have crippled more horses than they've helped. The health and strength of the hoof is critical to your horse's overall soundness. The time is now to bring horseshoes up to modern-day standards with up-to-date science to back the methodology and technology to develop the shoe's structure, design, and material. Want to know more? Visit goldenwingshorseshoes.com or call us at 602-909-3144. Doesn't your horse deserve the latest technology? Visit goldenwingshorseshoes.com. Now, something about that I think is valuable is you didn't just decide to start this one day. You're actually a degreed professional in this. Could you talk about that? Because I think it's important.
Sure. I am a trained behavioral analyst. I went to Penn State for my graduate degrees, and I spent a lot of time focusing on people with different behavioral disorders, anywhere from schools to I worked in a psychiatric hospital when I first came out of training, and that really led me down the path of working with veterans and families.
Okay. I've got to think working in a psychiatric hospital is really, you see just about everything, don't you?
Some of the best stories I have come from that hospital.
There's a book there, but since you brought up, I want to go off the rail a little. So, not a professional in any shape, way, or form, don't, even we do psychology here sometimes inadvertently. One time we had psychiatrists who came here. I think they're psychiatrists, could have been psychologists for years. And we used to laugh about. I would tell one of our crazy stories, and then they would analyze it from a psychiatric perspective. Anyway, I have no knowledge. You worked in a psych hospital. The U.S. had a policy shift. I've read multiple times, somewhat related to Over the Cuckoo's Nest, because the public reaction to the horror show. That is there a role in are we underutilizing psych hospitals?
I think that's a loaded question that you will probably get varied responses depending
Oh,
on
I'll
who you
bet
ask. But you're
money
asking
on
me,
that.
so
I'll bet money.
since you're asking me, I'll give you my opinion. I don't think that we did psych hospitals correctly in the past, because in the late 1800s and the early 1920s, psych hospitals really became a place for you to send people that you essentially didn't want to deal with anymore. So you had people who went there who were just maybe mopey or sad, and they ended up getting electroshock therapy, and they were mixed in with people who had true psychotic episodes and were dangerous people. But they were all in the same area. That system prevailed and got bigger and bigger right around until the Reagan era. Reagan then said, we're not doing this right, and there really wasn't a good system for what to do with these. So what they decided to do at the time was to break it up. So we no longer had these big hospitals. We broke it up into centers, and everybody was either released and went back into the community, or they went into these smaller regional centers all around that also weren't really giving the greatest level of care. About 30 years ago, you start seeing an upward trend in these hospitals beginning to open back up, beginning to increase their census, because one of what we were learning was you had really great doctors starting to want to help these people. And so you get this mixed bag now of, we don't want to quote unquote warehouse people. We want people to make real life changes. However, unfortunately, there are some people who really do need to be in managed facilities due to whatever their diagnoses are, whatever their behavioral histories are. So nowadays, I do think that we might be underutilizing hospitals, because I think there's an opportunity there to provide really good comprehensive care to people.
I mean, that's my layman's bet.
Yeah.
You see homeless people that are just tragically.
Yeah, there's I don't know if you were referring to this, but we did just go through a time in our history where we had a president that thought that he was doing a good job by protecting people's rights and by putting infrastructure into place that was supposed to help people. But it really did become a bit of a disaster, because he didn't do it right, in my opinion. And what happened when that occurred was prices skyrocketed. Those prices get transferred over to taxpayers, and people then begin to abuse the system. When they start abusing the system, we then have to come up with other structures or other reasons to justify why we still want to keep all this funding in place. And what you end up having is a broken system at the end of the day. So I think that's the other thing too, is if you're going to do it, you should do it right. And if you can't do it right, then you shouldn't do it at all. And sometimes things aren't needing to be fixed that aren't broken.
Yeah, it ain't broken. Well, I got us down a digression path, but
well, I have another question on this digression path, though.
Good.
When you said if we're not doing it right, we shouldn't do it at all, and the fact that we are doing it, and I think by your opinion, we're not doing it right, is that potentially damaging people?
Yes, I would say that you have systems in place that don't really allow for good comprehensive care. As I mentioned earlier, you have more of a priority on insurance, and people who work in the insurance industry, they make money off of what the worst case scenario, and you have a lot of people who are putting policies in place that really don't know what they're talking about, but they do understand money, and they do understand how to make it, how to keep it. And that becomes the main focus in healthcare, is where do these managed care organizations, how are they making their money? How are they keeping their money? How are they hiring all of these staff people who are not trained professionals, but they, are some reason needed? And so to answer you, that's a long-winded way of saying the emphasis now becomes on money and not on quality care of an individual.
And that's clearly not where the emphasis with BaseCamp is.
No, one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is nobody on our staff takes a salary. We obviously pay for, the things that we need to pay for. We make sure that we have resources available to do what we do. However, our focus isn't on money. Our focus is on can we provide good quality services, good quality experiences to our veterans so that they are able to actually benefit from the product.
Okay. Now, you are largely, or maybe completely, donation-driven.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we are 100% funded through fundraising and donations and going out and talking to people, just as we are now.
You must do a lot of talking to people because I'm sure what you're doing is not inexpensive.
We do a lot of talking. Deborah and myself spend a great deal of time traveling around the state, traveling around the country. Any opportunity we can to talk about our program, we're more than happy to. In a couple of weeks, I'm going up to Phoenix for a Be Connected symposium where I'm going to give a presentation in front of other nonprofits, other mental health organizations, and bringing my horse up there. And we're just going to spend the day running people through different clinics and talking about what it is that we do and giving them a little snippet of how it works, in hopes that they will share and just raise awareness. So we're not just trying to raise money, we're trying to raise awareness. We're trying to give people the opportunity to say, hey, have you heard about this program, BCI? Maybe your cousin would really benefit from that, or your father, or whoever. Go check them out. I saw them, type of thing.
Okay. And not to sound, I don't know, goody two-shoes or whatever, I have to say, every time I write a check to BaseCamp and then I come out here and see the people that are in BaseCamp, it reaffirms that that was a very, very good thing to do.
Well, thank you. And, every dollar for dollar goes to something. And whether it be us buying a birthday cake for a kid that just happens to be spending their week here with us with their father, all the way up to, people need different resources for their houses. One of the things that also happens when you're building community, I think, is people tell you a lot about their lives. They tell you a lot about what's going on in it. And we've had veterans that have come to us and said, I'm struggling with this bill, or I'm struggling with X, Y, or Z. And we come together and we say, can we help with that? Can we really put our money where our mouth is and be a part of this community and give back to you?
Remarkable. Remarkable. So if someone wants to give money to BaseCamp, how do they do it?
Well, there's a couple different ways. Of course, you can go to our website, which is BCamp Inc., and there's a donate button on there. You can donate any dollar amount that you want to. You also have the opportunity to sponsor a veteran, sponsor a clinic we're doing, or even sponsor one of our specific modalities, such as our equine therapist or our horse trainer.
Okay. Okay, that's BCamp Inc.
Yes.
Okay, .com?
.com.
Okay. Do you have the opportunity for anyone to actually get personally involved, or is that something that you folks have all squared away?
With regards to volunteering?
Yes. And I don't know the answer to that. I'm just asking.
We toy around with whether or not that is helpful or not. We love the interest, and we want people to come and introduce us to new ways that they could help out. One of the things that I think we are most pride ourselves on is, if you want to be a part of our community, are you going to stick around? Or are you coming for your own benefit? So sometimes we do, unfortunately, get volunteers who are really trying to benefit in their own way from what we're doing. They might be looking to learn about this program in their own way. They might be trying to take from it and build their own program.
Okay.
All that's perfectly fine, and we want to share in that. But however, we're introducing you into some of the most intimate places of people's lives and their families. We don't take that lightly. So if you're going to volunteer, we hope that you're going to volunteer for a long time.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Right.
Russell?
And it's a 501c3, so I mean it's a fully tax deductible, and you as you said, there's no personal benefit financially. I'm sure there's lots of other personal benefit, both you and Deborah are refugees from the East, right? Deborah's Manhattan, I think, grew up and, of course, started coming here as a guest at 2.5. She pointed out. I said 3. She goes, well, it was actually 2.5.
That's Deborah.
And you're here from Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I came from Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, and was introduced to White Stallion Ranch through Deborah. She brought me out here as a friend in 2016, I think, or 2017, and we just spent some time riding and laying by the pool and just, being friends. And when it came time for us to start talking about the inception of BaseCamp for Veterans, we really struggled with where we should do it. And it just so happened to be on one of our friend trips out here one year, and I said, why not this place? And she was really apprehensive about that. This became a place for her family to relax and to enjoy themselves. And I think over time she came to realize that maybe this is a good place to share with others.
Yeah, and let's just, because we're almost out of time, can we talk a little bit about who else is involved, what the experience is? Because we hit on the Mustangs, but you've got some pretty qualified folks involved.
Right. It is not just Deborah and myself. We have a wonderful team behind us. I know we mentioned our board members such as Michael. And then we also have a previous board member, a previous class participant, class 0. His name is Brian Krupa. He now sits on our board as well and is really integral in our programming and making sure that we're staying very focused on veterans. Then we have what we affectionately call our herd mare, who is Carol Bachman. She spends a lot of time on our family side of things, working with different horsemanship, working with getting them to understand the mechanics of the horse, of the relationship between the horse and the human. Then we're really blessed to have on our team a Mustang trainer. His name is Randy Helm, and he actually was one of the individuals who really gave us the idea of how to create BaseCamp for Veterans. He used to run a Mustang program for the inmates out at Florence Penitentiary.
Yeah, the maximum security, where the bad boys go.
Yeah, and we saw him on CNN, and we went out to visit him one day. Very gracious man, and he told us, exactly what we should do in many ways, and we followed his instruction. We did go with a different horse trainer. He was not available, and a couple of years go by. We are in the market for a new Mustang trainer, and we call Randy, and he says, absolutely, I've been following you guys. I'd love to be part of your team. A wealth of knowledge there, and we are truly blessed to have him. And then we have an equine therapist. Her name is Tamara Klaus. She is an equine therapist at a reservation locally here in Tucson, and she donates a lot of her time to come over and run us through equine mental health.
Wow.
So, I think it's important. This isn't, it just isn't Theo and Deb's great adventure.
No, right.
This is serious people doing serious work and very small groups. So these folks are getting some really specialized and as you say, my gosh, Philippe, one of your great, I think, early participants.
Class 0.
I was acting in a consulting basis for a dude ranch proposal down in Santa Cruz County, and here he shows up and gives this eloquent speech on our behalf, and just showed that well-spoken, presented himself really, really well, lives down there, so he's part of that whole culture down there, but also took the time out of I didn't ask him. He just showed up. And, I didn't deserve his time and energy. So it was, these are the folks you have. And, I wish it was bigger because I've seen the effect it has on the people that you're able to provide this very high level of whatever it is, high level care.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up because a lot of times people do say, oh, thank you, Deborah, thank you, Theo, when they see us. And we're the remarkable beneficiaries of everyone's kindness and gratitude. However, that's really just because we're the ones that are out there talking and sharing this experience. There is a team behind us of dedicated passionate people that really do the hard work.
Absolutely.
Well, and again, they're pros. I mean, these are people, Randy's a renowned guy, and you're Tamara is also. So, well, we've run way out of time. Thank you for this, Theo, and hopefully I got my technology in line, and we appreciate the time.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Theo, for coming in. Russell, I'm kind of taken aback by Theo and his stories and the contribution that he makes. It's remarkable, and it changes lives, and it shows what can happen when you've got a dedicated team of professionals and they've got something to tie it to, which is equine therapy and just the concept of making your life better.
Right. Well, these folks, these veterans, these combat veterans, they focus on combat veterans. War is a horror show and always has been, but you add this level of technology and I think that it just and the culture of comfort and first world problems. I love it when somebody says, "Oh, gee, my laptop is acting up." Oh, first world problem, and I think it puts things in place. So I think when you have this, I mean, even people in relative poverty in the U.S. live so much better than so many people in the world.
So true.
So you have this level of comfort, and then you go sleep on the ground and might get blown up, and IEDs and the low level risk of IEDs, et cetera, and then the high tech stuff, and then you come back and you're supposed to reassimilate, even though, thank God, our culture supports our veterans, unlike Vietnam when I was young, which is a whole different set of problems. I think that, thank goodness, they're, there's groups like this who, and of course, I think horses heal a lot of people in a lot of ways, and I'm witness to it. I'm not the therapist. I'm a facilitator. So all for it. I think it's great. And, hats off to Michael and all the folks who make it happen.
It's refreshing.
Well, that's a wrap, folks, and we thank you for being with us for the Cowboy Up podcast. This is where we try and, save Western civilization, one Western episode at a time. It is the place where you can enjoy the cowboy experience. And it's brought to you, of course, by White Stallion Ranch. And, of course, we thank all of the people who are involved. Thank you, Golden Wings, for the work you do to help make the Cowboy Up podcast possible. Hey, we'd love to hear from you. Just reach out to us. The Cowboy Up Podcast at gmail.com. The Cowboy Up Podcast at gmail.com. Tell us how we can do better, how we can help you enjoy the program even more, and perhaps you even would like to raise your hand and say, I think I have a story to tell, and perhaps I could be a part of the Cowboy Up Podcast. Or somebody who has, just like we have these great guests who have stories to tell and, good things to share with one another about that deal, the Western way of life. We need to make more of it. That is for sure. So, thank you so much. My name is Stan. I am the radio man, part of the Cowboy Spirit Radio Network, and it's my privilege and pleasure to bring this program to you. All the best and blessings to you. Stay safe, walk tall, and be bold, be brave, be the cowboy way.